Elias Voss killed the engine of his matte black hypercar at the crest of the private driveway and sat motionless behind the wheel, staring at the warmly lit windows of his Pacific Heights mansion glowing like a lantern in the San Francisco fog. He had just stepped off a red-eye from Tokyo, abandoning a $2.4 billion deal that had consumed the last 18 months of his life. No one knew he was coming home 12 hours early. The house should have been wrapped in the same suffocating silence that had choked it for 8 long months since Serafina's death, a silence so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were mourning. But tonight the silence was broken. 3 small voices drifted through the cracked window, laughter, real and bright, tangled with the clink of spoons in bowls and the low, warm hum of a familiar lullaby. His chest tightened. He stepped out, Italian leather shoes whispering across the marble, heart hammering harder than it had during any high-stakes boardroom standoff. 8 months of watching his daughters disappear into grief, and now this. He turned the key, pushed the heavy front door open without a sound, and the scent hit him like a wave he thought he had drowned in. Warm vanilla, melted butter, cinnamon sugar, and the faint ghost of Serafina's favorite lavender perfume drifting from somewhere deep inside. Elias moved down the long hallway like a man walking through a dream, past the grand piano no one had touched since October, past the living room where his girls once chased each other in giggling circles until they collapsed in happy heaps. The sounds grew louder. They were coming from the kitchen. He stopped just outside the half-open door, breath caught somewhere between terror and impossible hope, and looked inside. There she stood, aloe in heart, in her faded blue apron and those same worn canvas sneakers that looked like they had walked every hard mile life could offer. Flour dusted her dark braid. Around her, on 3 matching step stools pulled up to the marble island, were his 7-year-old triplets, Lyra with her wide dreamer's eyes that used to see magic in everything, Celine the quiet storm who felt every emotion 10 times deeper than most, and Nova the spark who once lit up every room with her wild energy. All 3 wore tiny aprons. Their faces were streaked with batter. They were cracking eggs, stirring, and laughing in a way Elias had not heard since the morning the hospital called. Aloan wiped a smear of flour from Nova's cheek with a corner of her apron and said gently, her voice carrying that same soft steadiness that had somehow slipped past every wall he had built, "Your mama always said the best cakes are the messy ones. That's how the love sneaks in between the cracks." Lyra's smile was wide and unguarded, the kind of smile that used to make Serafina laugh until tears came. Celine leaned her small head against Aloan's side like she had finally found something solid to rest on. Nova whispered something that sent all 4 of them into fresh peals of laughter, the sound bouncing off the high ceilings like it belonged there again. Elias gripped the doorframe so tightly his knuckles turned white. 8 months earlier, on a crisp October morning, Serafina Voss, 41 years old, radiant and full of life, the only person who could make Elias forget he ran one of the most powerful fintech empires on the planet, had collapsed during her sunrise yoga on the rooftop terrace. Sudden brain aneurysm. No warning. No last words. By the time his private jet touched down, she was already gone. The triplets, Lyra, Celine, and Nova, had simply folded into themselves. They stopped speaking above a whisper. They ate only when coaxed with gentle promises. They sat pressed together on the window seat overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, 3 small bodies in perfect silence, staring at a world that no longer made sense. The mansion that once echoed with Beatles songs, bedtime stories, and the patter of little feet became a beautiful, echoing tomb. Even the staff moved like ghosts, afraid to disturb the heavy quiet. Elias Voss had built an empire that guarded the digital lives of half the Fortune 100. He could move markets with one email, buy islands on a whim, fund entire research hospitals. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He spent. First came the world-renowned grief counselor from Zurich, 6 figures for 30 days of intensive sessions. The girls stared at the floor the entire time. Next, the celebrity attachment therapist who had healed Hollywood dynasties. She lasted 19 days before quietly admitting defeat. Then the full equine therapy program on a private Sonoma ranch, imported horses, custom saddles, daily chartered flights for the girls. They sat on the horses, but never smiled. The silence only grew heavier, thicker, until even the bay view outside the windows felt cold. One night Elias stood outside their bedroom door listening to them cry themselves to sleep and whispered into the dark, "I can buy anything. Why can't I buy back their laughter? Why can't I fix this?" That was the week Elias Hart's application crossed his desk. Thin resume. No advanced degrees. Worn shoes. His estate manager had almost rejected it outright, but one line in her short letter stopped Elias cold. "I lost my little brother when I was 11, Mr. Voss. Some pains don't need fixing. They need someone willing to sit in the dark with you until the light feels safe enough to return." He granted the 5-minute interview. She sat across from him in his study, tired eyes steady, and said simply, "I'm not here to replace their mother, sir. I'm here to remind them she's still allowed to live in their days, in the small things that matter." He hired her the same afternoon. The first week Elias moved through the mansion like a quiet breeze that refused to be ignored. She never forced conversation. She simply cooked breakfasts that smelled like care, scrambled eggs with fresh herbs from the garden she had quietly started tending, toast cut into stars because she had overheard the girls once mention how much they loved stars. She hummed the exact lullaby Serafina used to sing while folding their clothes with careful hands. Each night, she left a tiny handwritten note on their pillows. "Today you are allowed to miss her, and still smile once. It doesn't mean you love her any less." She never demanded they speak. She only offered presents, steady and warm. On the fourth morning Lyra appeared in the kitchen doorway while Elias kneaded bread dough, flour up to her elbows. "Why do you hum even when nobody's listening?" the little girl asked, voice like rust after months of near silence. Elias kept working, hands steady. "Because my brother used to say silence can get too heavy if you carry it alone. So I fill it with something soft until my heart remembers it's not alone anymore. Want to try kneading with me?" Celine stepped out from behind her sister. Nova followed a heartbeat later. They didn't say much that day, but they stayed. They watched. They inched closer to the counter, small fingers eventually dipping into the flour. By the 7th day the girls were helping stir pancake batter, their shoulders brushing Elias's. By the 9th day Celine whispered her first full sentence in months while they baked cookies together. "Mama used to let us put extra chocolate chips, and then laugh when they melted everywhere and made sticky fingers." Elias smiled without looking up. "Then extra chocolate chips it is. Sounds like your mama knew the real secret to perfect cookies. Shall we make a mess on purpose?" Nova's small hand found the edge of Elias's apron and held on tight, as if afraid the moment might vanish. Elias watched all of it from the security feeds in his study late at night when he told himself he was only checking the house alarms. He saw his daughters leaning into this woman the way they used to lean into Serafina. Every night the crack in his chest widened a little more, until he could barely breathe. On the 10th day, Elias did something she knew could cost her everything. She entered the one room Elias had locked since the day after the funeral, Serafina's private study. Dust floated in the slanted afternoon light. Serafina's favorite fountain pen still rested beside an open notebook. Elias dusted with reverent hands, treating every object like it still held breath. That was when she found the leather journal hidden behind a row of poetry books. The first page was dated 6 months before Serafina died. "For my girls on their 8th birthday, if I'm not here to say it myself." Elias sat on the floor and read with trembling fingers. Page after page of pure love, the cake recipe written in Serafina's elegant script, 3 dresses described by color and meaning, midnight blue for Lyra the dreamer, silver gray for Celine the quiet storm, soft gold for Nova the spark. The family song they sang at every birthday, memories of past celebrations. And at the very back, an unfinished letter that ended mid-sentence. "My darlings, if I could give you one thing it would be permission to keep living loudly even when your heart is breaking. Love doesn't die. It just changes shape and waits for someone brave enough to carry it forward." The desk calendar had the date circled in bold red. Their 8th birthday was exactly 5 days away. Elias closed the journal, pressed it to her chest, and cried silent tears for a mother she had never met and for 3 little girls who still believed joy had died with her. Then she wiped her eyes and made a choice that could end her job in an instant. She would not tell Elias. Not yet. She would finish what Serafina had started, even if it meant risking the only steady paycheck she had ever known. The next 3 days became a secret mission of quiet miracles. While Elias was locked in back-to-back meetings across the city, Eloan took the girls shopping with his black card, hearts racing the whole time. They found the exact dresses Serafina had described. Lyra twirled in midnight blue in front of the mirror and whispered, "I feel like Mama picked this color just for me because she knew I love the night sky." Celine touched the silver gray fabric and said softly, "It feels like her hugs on rainy days." Nova spun in soft gold until she was dizzy with laughter, nearly knocking over a display. Back home, they practiced the cake in secret each morning after Elias left for the office. The first batch came out lopsided, and they declared it beautifully imperfect, just like Mama liked her art projects. The second batch they added extra vanilla, because the journal said Nova loved it that way, and they sang the family song off-key and danced around the kitchen like the old days, flower clouds rising like tiny galaxies. Each practice run brought more stories, more giggles, more pieces of Serafina slipping back into the house. Elias noticed the house changing the way a man notices sunlight after years underground. The air felt warmer. The girls looked up when he came home instead of away. Yet he still left before dawn every morning, burying himself in work because facing the birthday felt like admitting how badly he had failed them all. The night before the birthday, Eloan sat alone in the study after the girls were asleep, carefully copying every recipe by hand so the original journal could stay untouched and sacred. She whispered into the quiet room, "I don't know if I'm doing this right, Serafina, but every step is filled with the love you left behind. Please let this heal them a little." Elias stood just outside the door, listening unseen, and felt the last wall inside him begin to crumble completely. On the morning of their 8th birthday, Elias left the house at 5:30 a.m. like always, texting the house manager about a fabricated client emergency. The guilt sat heavy in his chest like lead, but he still ran. Eloan woke the girls at dawn with gentle touches on their shoulders and soft smiles. They found her in the kitchen wearing Serafina's old apron, the journal open on the counter, like a treasure map from heaven. "Today," she said, voice steady and warm, "we are going to do exactly what your mama planned. Every single beautiful detail. Are you ready?" The next 4 hours unfolded like pure magic wrapped in joyful chaos. 3 girls in their new dresses stood on stools cracking eggs exactly as the journal described, little tongues sticking out in concentration. Flower clouds rose like constellations. They measured sugar with careful hands. Nova licked the spoon and declared the batter, even better than Mama's dreams on her best day. They sang the family song at the top of their lungs while the cake baked golden and perfect in the oven. They decorated it together, wobbly frosting letters spelling, "Happy 8th birthday, Lyra, Celine, and Nova." 24 candles stood ready like tiny stars waiting to be wished upon. Eloan lit them just as the front door clicked open downstairs. Elias had turned his car around halfway to the office. The guilt had finally broken through every defense he had left. He stepped into his own kitchen expecting the usual heavy silence, and instead walked straight into light, laughter, and the exact scent of Serafina's famous birthday cake. 3 girls in midnight blue, silver gray, and soft gold froze mid-clap. Eloan stood behind them, hands dusted with flour, eyes calm but shining with quiet courage. "Daddy," Lyra whispered first, voice small but full of hope. The briefcase hit the marble floor with a soft thud. Elias Voss, the man who had closed billion-dollar deals without flinching, dropped to his knees right there among the flour and the joy. "I forgot," he choked out, voice breaking completely. "I forgot my own daughter's birthday. I thought if I stayed away the pain would stay away too. I was so wrong. I thought money could fix this. I was wrong about everything." Before he could finish, 3 small bodies crashed into him, arms around his neck, faces pressed against his chest, tears and frosting mixing together. Celine's voice was the clearest he had heard in 8 months. "It's okay, Daddy. Eloan found Mama's secret book. She said Mama wanted us to celebrate even when it hurts, because love doesn't stop when someone leaves. Nova held up a fork with a piece of cake. Try it. We made it exactly like she wrote. Extra vanilla for me. Just the way Mama planned. Elias took the bite and tasted every memory he had tried to outrun. He looked up at Eloan through blurred eyes. You risked everything to give them this. You risked your job, your safety, everything. She nodded once, simple and steady. They deserve their Mama's day. And you deserve to see them happy again. That's all that mattered. He stood slowly, still holding all three girls close, and walked straight to Eloan. For a long moment, the most powerful man in the room simply looked at the woman with the worn sneakers who had done what money never could. Thank you, he said, voice raw and honest. I thought money could fix their pain. I threw millions at the problem and watched them disappear anyway. You proved me wrong in the most beautiful way possible. The five of them sat at the kitchen island eating cake, while the afternoon sun painted the bay gold outside the tall windows. The girls told story after story about Serafina, how she once danced in the rain with them until they were soaked and laughing so hard they couldn't breathe, how she burned cookies on purpose one year and called them charred masterpieces, worthy of a museum. Elias listened without once checking his phone. He was completely present for the first time in 8 months, letting every word sink in later, after the girls had gone upstairs to play. Actually play, with real energy and joy and the sound of footsteps running again. Elias found Eloan washing dishes alone. He picked up a towel and dried beside her in silence for a long time, the simple rhythm of the task feeling like the first normal thing he had done in months. I need you to know something, he finally said. I've been watching you every night on the security feeds. I saw you hold them when they cried. I saw you turn this cold house back into a home one small act at a time. I thought I was protecting them by staying away. I was only protecting myself from feeling everything I lost. I don't know how to thank you enough. Eloan kept washing a plate, her movements steady. Grief makes even the strongest people run, Elias. But running only makes the silence louder. I just sat with them. That's all. He corrected her gently. Elias. And you're not the maid anymore. You're family if you'll stay. Really stay. She turned off the water and met his eyes. I have nowhere else I'd rather be. This feels like home now. 2 weeks later, Elias gathered the girls in the living room and made the announcement official. Eloan would move into the guest house permanently. He would pay for her to finish the child psychology degree she had been taking online at night while working 3 jobs before this one. In return, she would continue being exactly who she already was, the steady heartbeat of the house. The girls tackled her in a group hug so fierce they almost knocked her over, laughing and crying at the same time. That night, Elias sat alone in Serafina's study with the journal open. He read every word she had left behind, then picked up her fountain pen and finished the letter she never could, his handwriting steady for the first time in months. My darlings, if you're reading this on your 8th birthday, know that I am cheering louder than any crowd. I sent you someone who understands that love isn't loud or expensive, it's consistent. It shows up in flower-dusted kitchens and hummed lullabies and the willingness to sit in the dark until the light feels safe again. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to each other. And never forget that the greatest legacy I could leave isn't money or success. It's the 3 of you learning how to live fully even when part of your heart is missing. Forever loving you, Mama. P.S. Tell your father it's okay to cry in the kitchen. I did it plenty of times when you 3 were babies and the world felt too big. He's learning now, just like you. Elias closed the journal, walked upstairs, and stood outside the girls' bedroom listening to them giggle about tomorrow's new tradition. Every Friday they would cook one of Serafina's recipes and share one story about her. He smiled without forcing it, the sound filling him with something he had almost forgotten. Peace. Down the hall in the guest house, Eloan Hart sat on her new bed looking at the simple set of keys Elias had given her that afternoon. She thought about her little brother, about every night she had wished someone would just sit with her in the pain instead of trying to fix it. She whispered into the quiet, "Thank you for trusting me with them. Thank you for letting me stay." Outside, The San Francisco lights glittered across the bay like 1,000 second chances. Inside the Voss mansion, the silence was finally gone, replaced by the soft sound of three girls breathing peacefully, a father learning how to stay, and a maid who had never wanted to be famous, proving that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is simply refusing to let love stay buried. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, Serafina Voss was smiling, because her plan had worked exactly the way she had written it. Not through money, not through experts, but through one ordinary woman with worn sneakers who understood that the most beautiful healing doesn't announce itself. It just shows up, apron on, humming an old lullaby, and quietly puts the pieces back together one cracked egg at a time. The moral of their story was simple and true. No amount of wealth can buy the presence of a loving heart. Real healing begins the moment someone chooses to sit in the pain with you instead of trying to solve it from a distance. And sometimes the person who saves your family is the one the world almost overlooked, the one who shows up with nothing but kindness and stays long enough for the light to return.